Hello everybody, and today we're going to look at some spooky cards for the spooky season. I mean, it's not like the most spooky, but Walking Dead can be kind of spooky. It can be jump scary. It's not really spooky, but we're going to look at a Negan deck in celebration of Halloween, or the Halloween month anyway. I've been wanting to make this video for a while anyway, and this seems like a really good reason to do it, right? So we're just going to jump right into it and start with our commander. So Negan the Cold-Blooded, this is our commander. Basically, it's a sacrifice themed deck, and we're going to want to be sacrificing as many things as we can, and Negan helps with that. There's payoffs when our opponent sacrifices things. Basically the idea of the deck. We're just going to build into that as much as possible. So Negan, I'll read him. I probably won't read every single card. I'll just describe what they do. Keep the time manageable. Negan the Cold-Blooded. When Negan enters the battlefield, you and target opponent each secretly choose a creature that player controls. Then those creatures are revealed, and that player sacrifices those creatures. Whenever an opponent sacrifices a creature, you create a treasure token. So we want to have our opponent sacrificing as much stuff as possible, and then accumulate as many treasures as possible. Our end goal win condition is Revel in Riches, which I will be showing you soon, but the idea is we want to have as many treasures as possible, so things that care about treasures, we can use them. So to that end, we have a couple different categories of card. We'll start with the cards that care about our treasures, actually. So we have a few cards that care about our treasures. One of them is Gadrick the Crown Scourged. We create a treasure for each non-token creature that died this turn, so we're going to hopefully be sacrificing a lot of our opponent's creatures while Gadrick's on board, and then he can attack for 5 once we have the prerequisite amount of treasures, which is 4. It doesn't even have to be treasures, it's just artifacts, so that's usually pretty easy to do. Most time when we play Gadrick, we can attack him immediately, but he just creates more treasures for us, which is pretty nice. We also run Academy Manufacturer. Whenever we get a treasure, we also get a clue and a food, which is pretty great. Life gain, we get some back. Comes card draw. We will need that because we are in Mardu, and card draw is not absolutely our strong suit. So this is a really good card to have in our deck. Then we have Rosie Cotton of South Lane, which is the battlefield, create a food. Whenever you create a token, put a 1/1 counter on another creature besides Rosie. So we're going to make a lot of treasures. Every time we make a treasure, we're putting counters on stuff, which is pretty good. We have Zorn. As if we create one or more treasures, we create an extra treasure, which is pretty solid, honestly. It doesn't double our treasure specifically, but it is just more treasure production, which is pretty nice. And one of our payoffs, another thing that cares about tokens, Mirkwood Bats. So whenever we create or sacrifice a token, each opponent loses 1 life. So we're creating a bunch of treasures, they're going to lose life. We sack them to do stuff, they're going to lose life. Mirkwood Bats can just win the game on its own. Creating 20 treasures while this card's on board just wins us the game. We create them, they lose 20. We sack them immediately, they lose 20. There's almost nothing they can do in response, which is pretty great. So those are our token payoffs. Now we're going to look at our specifically things dying payoffs, or sacking. So we got a Taser Karloff. I won't even say it's a payoff, it's more of a enabler, right? So if something dies and it causes Negan to trigger to create treasures, or one of our other things we just talked about, that effect is doubled, which is pretty useful for us. The other effects, not so much, but that alone is worth it. Then we have Turgrid, God of Fright, which has a backside that we will never care about. She is it that betrays, but costs less. If an opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent, we get that non-token permanent. It's pretty good. Then we have Hedron Detonator. Whenever an artifact enters the battlefield, we deal 1 damage to an opponent. Again, we're going to create a lot of treasures, so it does care about that. But then sacrifice 2 artifacts, exile the top card of your library, you may play that card this turn. It's card draw. We will need some of that. It's a way to use our treasure, because a lot of times we'll have an overabundance of treasures in this deck with nothing to do, and this kind of solves that. Mayhem Devil. Whenever a player sacrifices a permanent, Mayhem Devil does 1 damage to any target. We're going to sack a bunch of treasures. We'll give it a pig off our opponent's small creatures, or even some other big creatures if we have enough treasures, which we often do. And we have Drivnod, Carnage Dominus. This one might be kind of hard to read. Some of the foils will be, so I will also put them on screen if need be. But Drivnod is, again, a dies effect doubler. So when something dies, we're going to get that ability again. That's all he's really here for, but I think that's enough. Also can be indestructible. It's just a big guy, and it looks really nice. I got this one signed by Thomas Baxa at Vegas, and I was really happy about it to put in the deck. And then we have Gandalf the White. For legendary permanent artifact, entering or leaving the battlefield, causing the triggered ability called a trigger, it triggers again. So again, artifacts entering will get those triggers for like Mirkwood Bats. Artifacts leaving will get those triggers for like everything else, which is pretty sick. And then we'll need a way to make our opponent start sacrificing some stuff. So we got a bevy, like we got a lot of things to do that. So we'll get right into it. Let's start with the Phyrexian Obliterator, recently reprinted, never looking better. I don't know, that's an opinion. I think it looks really nice. Whenever a source deals damage to Phyrexian Obliterator, that controller sacrifices that many permanents. Really good for us. All we want is our opponents to sacrifice stuff. So this kind of does everything we want it to do right then and there. We've got Fleshbag Marauder, and in addition to that, we also have 3 cards that basically do the same thing, and then 1 card that sort of does the same thing. So we got Fleshbag Marauder, Gravelighter, oh god, Fleshbag Marauder, Gravelighter, and Playcrafter. When they enter the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature. That's all they do. We'll sack them to themselves sometimes. Sometimes we'll sack an insignificant token we have. Doesn't really matter. We just want our opponent sacking things. And then we have Banana Sleeper, which has the same CMC if you pay its kicker cost as the rest of these cards. But if it doesn't, it's just a 3/1 we just get to have for 2 mana. So it's kind of a little better than Playcrafter and the Fleshbag Marauder. So it's not too bad. We also run Cataclysmic Gearhulk. I just picked up this masterpiece at Vegas, and I was super excited to slot into the deck. I've been looking for this card for a while, and my local shop has just not had it, so that was really nice. Picked up for $23. Enters the battlefield. Each player chooses 1 permanent of each type and sacks the rest. So normally we'll just pick our Negan and then some amount of treasures or an enchantment we have on board, and then they'll be losing pretty much their most important things most of the time. A lot of commander players like to build up these massive boards and these big machines, and we just get to take them apart, which is pretty nice. The most scary thing.
About a week ago, I came up with a funny prank idea.
We get Braids, Arisen Nightmare. So at the end step, we'll sack a permanent, and each of our opponents gets to either choose to sack a permanent or lose some life, and we'll draw some cards. So it's more incentive for them to get rid of stuff. Butcher of Malakir is on the chopping block, but it's whenever we sack a thing, or a thing we control dies, each opponent sacrifices a thing, so it can start these chains of things keep getting sacrificed over and over again, which is pretty good. The problem is Butcher of Malakir can sometimes force us to sack things we don't really want to sack. We want to be able to control that sack, and this kind of doesn't do it sometimes. Alright, then we get into one of our 2 Shielders. This is Shieldred, the Whispering One. This is actually my original pre-release promo from way back in the day. Or not my original one. I wasn't in Japan. I don't know, I'm sorry. I feel like a douchebag. I should know this. But I wasn't in Asia, but I did get this about the same time, which is really cool. But Shieldred, the Whispering One, I will put an English translation up, but basically at the beginning of upkeep, we'll bring a creature back from the graveyard, and at the beginning of each of our opponent's upkeeps, they'll sack a creature, which is really good for us. There's no downside. And then we have New Shieldred. Enters the battlefield, each opponent sacks a creature, which is pretty great, and then we get to exile it and flip it, and we will actually flip this one. These sleeves are really good. Dragon Shield, man, you'll be stepping up your game. It flips into the True Scriptures. So we destroy creatures, we force them to discard cards, and then we put all creatures from all battlefields onto our control. So we're forcing them to sack off their big things, and then eventually the hope is that we get everything. There are other cards that do the same exact thing, but this gets a lot of abilities. I really like creatures with sagas on the back, because this is a lot of abilities stapled onto one card. It's like running like 3 or 4 cards in one card, which feels really nice. Also, it has Menace, if that matters. And the final card that we run that enables our sack directly is Ranklin's Horbrand. Whenever it attacks, we can force each player to sack a creature, and we can also have everyone create a treasure token or increase damage output. It's really good. We almost never want to sacrifice the Ranklin's Horbrand because we want to do this a couple times, but it inevitably gets killed very quickly, so you can just go ahead and sack it. This is another Fleshbag Marauder, but a fast Fleshbag Marauder that deals some damage. We're almost through with our creatures. We got a couple more. We run Charming Prince to flicker our Negan so we can activate its ability again, secretly choosing an opponent thing, which is pretty good. Although our Negan will get sacrificed or killed pretty quickly, so we'll just cast it again most of the time. We usually just have the treasures on board to just cast them over, so it's not too bad. But if we don't, Charming Prince is good for that because it gets to flicker. Also gains us some life sometimes, or scry some cards if we're really low on cards and we need to make sure we're hitting something. It's useful for that. And Eldrazi Displacer for basically the same reason. We just get to pay some mana and flicker Negan as many times as we want, as long as we can pay for it. We usually just can. We run enough waste or colorless producing lands so we can use this a couple times a turn if we need to. And that's pretty cool. It's just for flickering Negan. And the final two creatures in the deck, again, these are cuts. These are close to cuts, but Orcish Bowmasters. Pro tip: if you're using your phone to record stuff, make sure you don't have it in a case because it'll overheat pretty quick. Pro tip. So, Orcish Bowmasters. This card's pretty amazing, but I am thinking about cutting it. Makes mono blue decks not want to be so mono blue, but the token's pretty insignificant. I mean, it is sack fodder and the damage is nice, but Mayhem Devil's already kind of doing that. Judas Scourged even might just be a better option. I don't know, but I am thinking about cutting this one. Dauthi Voidwalker. It's pretty good. We are causing our opponents to sacrifice a lot of things. We do want them to keep doing that, but this card just gets me so much hate at the table that I feel like it's probably not worth running. Like, in a Negan deck, this card is the one that people are most often afraid of. They just don't want to see it, so I've considered cutting it, but it is really good on its face. Every time your opponents lose something, we get it, and then we can recast it, which is pretty good. All right, that's going to do it for the creatures. We're going to get into a couple of the instants real quick, in no particular order, because they're all kind of feed into the same game plan. I don't categorize as heavily as the creatures. We'll start with Eerie Interlude. It's a bounce for all intents and purposes most of the time. We avoid a board wipe. It's a weaker Teferi's Protection, but it also resets Negan, which is pretty nice, unlike Teferi's Protection. Speaking of which, we run Teferi's Protection. We get to avoid board wipes. We get to avoid our own board wipes. We have quite a few board wipes in the deck, and to be able to not get blown out by them is pretty nice. Another hate piece here, Rakdos Charm. Our opponents like to have a lot of things, and sometimes we can't make them sack them all, but we can punish them for having a lot of things. So Rakdos Charm does that. Also exiles graveyards, which is pretty great. And we can also just get rid of a problematic artifact if need be, but usually use it for the exile of graveyards and punishing our opponents with lots of creatures. Sudden Edict is exactly what it says. It has Split Second, which is very useful. It can make our opponent sacrifice a thing if they're about to go off, and they can't respond to it. Sheoldred's Edict is one of our only good pieces of Planeswalker removal, and that's what we usually save it for, other than just attacking Planeswalkers, but it's pretty good. It causes opponents to sack Planeswalkers before they can activate their abilities, because activating Planeswalker abilities is a sorcery speed effect. Crackling Doom is one of the better cards in this deck. 2 damage to each opponent. Each opponent sacks a creature with the greatest power among creatures they control. That alone just does a lot. Most of the time, the most important creature on your opponent's side of the board is their most powerful one, and getting that 2 damage in is just gravy. Alright, then we've got Path to Exile. I will put an English translation up, I am sorry. But basically we get to exile any problem we have and then get some life back. I don't need to over-explain Path to Exile, but it's very good. And here's another card that I'm running just because it kind of looks nice. I probably would swap this out with another Edict if I, didn't feel like I had a lot of edicts. But Cabal Ritual, put a not signed one on screen now, but it's just a ritual. It adds 3 mana, or Threshold, it adds 5 mana. It's pretty good. It can get Negan out a little quicker if we need to, and get one of our other big spells out pretty quick if we need to. It's in here because it looks nice. Alright, we got a couple sorceries. Actually, I'll end with that one. Let's start with Scheming Symmetry. It just feels like a Negan card. It is a tutor. When I run tutors in my deck, I try not to run the generic good tutors, the Vampiric tutors, the Eladamri's Call, things like that. I'm not generally running those unless I want to make a competitive deck, which at this moment I don't have any anymore. My most competitive deck is Tattoo, and that's just because it's blue-green. I think blue-green just is innately kind of competitive. But the tutors I do run are things like Scheming Symmetry. Choose 2 players, each of them searches the library, puts a card top their library. I think it's very political. I really like this card. And if I'm going to run a tutor, I like to run this one. And hopefully we can use it in such a way that we can stop an opponent from going off, is the idea. If I can't do it, maybe someone else can. Alright, let's do these 3 all at once. So we've got Merciless Eviction. It is a board wipe, an exile type board wipe. We have Day of Judgment. I will put a text-fold one on here, but destroy all creatures. And a Wrath of God. Destroy all creatures, and they can't be regenerated. They are board wipes. We run quite a few of them. We don't so usually care how much our creatures die. You know, it's not really that important to us, but our opponent's creatures dying is very important to us. If we can't make them sack them, well, they're going away one way or the other. Here's another sort of board wipe. Each player chooses an artifact, creature, enchantment, or planeswalker from the belongers they control, and sacks the rest. If I pay the colors, if I pay Mardu into it, I choose those permanents for those players, so I can make them get rid of the most important things and keep dinky little tokens that don't really matter. Vandal Blast, because it's an artifact board wipe. People do hate playing against me sometimes. I run a lot of board wipes. It's Negan though. It feels like what he would do, right? Salt the earth kind of thing. Ancient Cravings. Ancient Cravings. Draw 3 cards, lose 3 life. It's just card draw. We do need it. Again, we're in Mario and card draw is hard to come by. And we have Dance with Calamity. So it's shuffle your library as many times as you choose. Exile titles from top of your library. If total mana is 13 or less, you may cast any number of those spells without paying their mana cost. So it's just like occasionally we get to get a couple big spells on board and don't get punished for it, which is usually enough. I've missed with it, but I still think it's worth running. We're in Mardu, and a little bit of chaos it feels very on flavor, right? Let's look at our one battle we have. Running it for the front side, it's an Invasion of Azgul. When it enters the battlefield, target player sacks a creature or planeswalker and loses 1 life. It's just another Edict. It's 2 mana. It's not bad. The backside, which I don't think I've ever cared enough to get going, is Ashen Reaper. At the beginning of your step, put 1 counter on Ashen Reaper if a permanent was put to the graveyard and battlefield this turn. It doesn't really get big enough to be relevant. It's usually sack fodder, but it's another Edict, and I get to play a battle in my Negan deck. I like battles. I think they're a really cool card type, so I wanted to run 1. I cut another Edict for this one, and this one feels fine. It's enchantment time. So, first enchantment, Leyline of the Void. Don't stop recurring things. We sack them. We want them gone. Don't do it anymore. Leyline of the Void is in your opening hand. You get to play it for free, and it just starts that ball rolling immediately, letting people know what you're about as a Negan player. Fable of the Mirror Breaker. I'll put an English one up now, but it lets you get some more cards. It puts a token on board. That token gets you treasures. God, what doesn't Fable do? Fable is the card, isn't it? And the backside turns into Kiki-Jiki, which is fine. Touch the Spirit Realm. It's either a removal spell or a bounce spell. We can use it to bounce Negan, or we can use it to remove a problem we have. And I really like this art. And again, there are probably better removal spells, but this one feels very nice. I really like the way this one looks. Black Market. This one can get us a lot of mana. All we're doing is causing creatures to die. And sometimes we just play this and then a turn cycle goes through and we have 20, 30 mana occasionally if we do a board wipe, which feels pretty good. Spiteful Banditry is another sort of board wipe. It also creates us treasure, so it's very on theme for Negan and does everything we kind of want to be doing anyway. Phyrexian Arena, I will put an English non-Phyrexian version up. Lose a life, draw an extra card per turn. Again, card draw, important, we need it. We don't run a lot of life gain, so maybe Phyrexian Arena is a good cut, maybe something else, but I haven't had a problem with it yet. And then our final enchantment is Revel in Riches. I will put a non-signed version up. Revel in Riches is one of our main win conditions. We want to play this when we have the 10 treasures, and then maybe Teferi's Protection out, so when we come back we just win. When you have 10 treasures on board, you win with this, and whenever opponent creature dies from an opponent, we get a treasure, so it's just more treasure production if nothing else. But this is our win condition. We want to protect this at all costs. We don't play this till we're ready. I know Revel in Riches is such a boring win condition, but like, it's Negan, you know, he's underhanded, he's dirty. But we got some artifacts to get through real quick, and it really shouldn't take that long because they're all pretty self-explanatory. I'll go through the most self-explanatory ones. So, we have Lightning Greaves. It protects Negan, which is kind of important. I don't know, it's been on the chopping blocks we cut for a while because we don't really care about Lightning Greaves, but because we don't care if Negan dies, but it's there. And then we have a bunch of rocks, so I'm just gonna go through this one real quick. We've got Arcane Signet, Talisman of Conviction, Orzhov Signet, Boros Signet, Soul Ring, signed by Craig Blanchett, Talisman of Hierarchy, signed by Jimmy Wong, and Felwar Stone. Yeah, I mean, like, we just need some mana rocks. These are pretty decent ones. Not the most expensive ones, and not the most perfectly balanced ones, but they're good. Oh, one more, and Swiftfoot Boots. Again, on the chopping block. I don't really care about Swiftfoot Boots. I don't care if Negan dies. He's the only reason you'd run this, but it still felt relevant. It felt relevant at the time of building. It still feels fine now. I can equip it to something else, give it haste. Alright, the more fun artifacts. We get Cauldron of Souls. Choose any number of target creatures. Those creatures gain persist. So when we inevitably edict away something important, or edict away our Negan, we give it persist. He comes back and does the same thing again. Feels pretty good. We can also give persist to like anything else in our deck and double edict. You know what I mean? It's not bad. Phial of Galandriel. I don't watch Lord of the Rings, so I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong.
Hey, this guy's a great big phony!
But it's a decent mana rock, but also it helps us get cards back if we're hellbent, helps us gain more life if we're dying. And our final artifact is, of course, couldn't have a Negan deck without Lucille. Whenever equipped creature attacks, defending player sacks a creature, and if they do, they create a walker token. So as soon as we attack with Negan, they automatically sack a thing, and then we create a token, and then we get a treasure. It just does everything we want to be doing. It came with Negan. It was meant for Negan. I couldn't imagine running this deck without it. And then finally we have just a big stack of lands, just a lot. I'm not going to run you through all of them. I'm only going to tell, because you're just running your colored lands, your blood crypts, your basics, your check lands, just the normal stuff. But I will run you through some relatively important ones for this deck. Takanuma, the Abandoned Mire, is one you should consider. Mill 3 cards and return a creature to your hand, which is pretty good. Get some of those creatures back we're edicting away or sacking. I also like to run Mine Moria because it creates us treasures, and we're all about creating treasures. We also run Sokenzan. It creates bodies for us to sack in case we need that. Otherwise, it's just a mountain, but having those bodies to stack can be really relevant sometimes. Bajuka Bog, because we're causing our opponents to put a lot of stuff in the graveyard. We don't want them to get it back. If we didn't get Leila into the Void, we didn't get Douthie, we just got to make sure those things go. So we have a lot of graveyard hate in our deck for our deck that causes a lot of things to go to the graveyard. And that's really about it as far as the lands that are relevant. Now, this mana base could be updated. It is a very consistent mana base, but it is not a very interesting mana base. I could put some more man lands in there. I could put some more lands with just general effects, channel lands, but I think being consistent with Negan and making sure you can drop it when you need to is more important than being cute. So that's why I've kind of kept the mana base as it is for now. And that's it for my boy Negan the Cold-Blooded. I think he is a great Halloween commander if you're the kind of person to build a new deck for every season or for special occasions. He's a real fun one to build. He's scary because when people see him, they know that there's going to be a lot of sacking, so they can't build up their strategies the way they want to. He's scary within himself, you know. I mean, he's just a man with a bloody bat. What's scarier than that, you know?
Rick, why don't you take your axe, cut your son's left arm off, right on that line. Yeah, I know. You're gonna have to process that for a second. That makes sense. Still, though, I'm gonna need you to do it, or all these people are gonna die.
Oh, the back of my Negan is the Joker, just for a little extra salt. But yeah, when you play him, you know every day you play him is gonna be a big day.
It's gonna be a big day.
Happy Friday the 13th is when I hope to get this out. If I didn't, happy Halloween. And I hope you have a great day.